Come one, come all. Ladies, gentlemen, gun sluts and autists. I present to you, the gun cunt.
What's going on, you little gun sluts? This is a video about the Cobray PM11 and this one came out roughly about either on the dot for the assault weapons ban in 1994 or just shortly after, and so it's going to have its own unique kind of details in and about it, primarily this magazine release here. First and foremost, I do want to mention that these types of pistols are they're not wildly practical in terms of stacking them up against modern PCCs, carbines, especially ones that are more modular, that have far more accessible and even cheaper magazines. This is something that's more of like a classic, cool, nostalgia, just a unique kind of range toy. So you could sink money into it. There's a few things you can do that you've seen here, and then there's a few more projects that I have that I'm going to add to this in the future that kind of get it up to speed and get it, like, I would say, on par with some of the more base level PCCs. Looking at this on paper, it's not wildly practical. The amount of money you would put into this versus something that's currently on the market that has all the bells and whistles already for, you know, maybe half the overall cost once you add up all the parts, that kind of gets you to a certain spot where it just becomes less and less realistic for a practical approach to a PCC. But if you're in for something that's unique, if you kind of like the whole, you know, gangster style gun, you know, of the 1980s, or if you just want something that kind of provides a different flavor for a range toy, well, then this could potentially be, you know, be the solution for you. So with the Cobray M11s, and I'm going to basically use it synonymously. Everybody typically knows these by M11, not PM11 or any of the other wacky designations that, you know, kind of change the you know, details in and around. So PM11 being, you know, the particular neutered one that I have versus the M11. I kind of want to avoid that headache, and I'm just going to refer to this as the M11. It's just going to help simplify things, but you know what the fuck I mean. So there are a few modern offerings of something that is reminiscent to this on the market. There is a family of these types of pistols that existed, Cobray, Mac 11. You got, I want to say Ingram had their model, which I don't know how loosely that differs from the M11. And there's plenty of really good videos on YouTube currently that cover a lot of that history. I'm strictly after just this is a project, these parts that I'm adding to this, so that it can either save you money or kind of spur an idea if you chose to you know, take up something like this. So there's a few modern offerings on the market that are readily accessible for civilians currently. So again, excluding the transferable machine gun. By that, I mean strictly these types of big chunky pistols, basically things that look like the M11 or Mac 10 or, you know, any of those kind of iterations. Basically, what people have access to, every now and then you'll find the Cobray M11s that are out there. I haven't seen a whole lot of Macs out there. I would say if you were to go online right now, that's what I'm referencing. So basically the common ones that you can get your hands on currently would probably be the modern offerings, the Gen 2s of the Masterpiece Arms Defender series of pistols. They used to manufacture these steel-framed versions, but they have shifted from that and gone with more of an ergonomic design and a modular kind of grip magwell system that allows you to basically switch through. You know, if you got the one with the Sten mag, you can buy a new grip module, magazine well, and utilize Glock mags, which again, on paper, it is a wiser investment to get the Glock mag version than the Sten version. And then that's got its own kind of holdups where they advertise it as a Sten mag, but they actually mean the very specific Tapco mold Sten mags, which are a lot slimmer, and they reduce the internal circumference of their grip area. So if you were to buy one of the Sten mag versions and you bought a whole, you know, box of metal Sten mags, it's not going to be compatible with that MPA Defender line of pistols. I would say the next kind of more common to what Masterpiece Arms used to make is a company called Velocity Firearms, and they make the Sten mag fed, so the steel Sten mag fed pistols with the steel frame, and they're actually a very affordable platform, and they can be just as tricked out as all of the other models. Circling back to the Masterpiece arms, so with their aluminum framed versions, they do have drilled and tapped holes in the rear of the receiver, so you can mount braces and folding stuff, or if you SBR'd it, you can mount stocks. They also sell a wide variety of the side charging uppers or the top charging uppers. Masterpiece Arms has also sprungboard into, at least as of recently on their Instagram page, they have transferred over, they're transitioning over into this kind of third gen, which has a rearward grip, which is an interchangeable AR style grip, and then they put the magazine out front, kind of like a whole VZ Scorpion style of pistol, and that's going to give end users a lot more, I would say, modularity in terms of changing out the grips. You know, you could rock drums and things like that. They're not limited by utilizing the grip as a mag well anymore, so it looks like they might be shifting to that. It does look like they're going to retain the use of the uppers. Until I see internal pictures, I'm unsure of how the fire control group is going to work, or if they're going to keep the supply line for their Gen 2 Defender series of pistols, the aluminum framed ones. As it stands now on their website, they do sell the internal components for the steel framed as well as the aluminum ones. They share the same components inside. Same thing with the all the upper components and things like that. But their third gen may be drastically different, other than just utilizing the upper. However, I'm unsure if with the geometry, if the fire control group is going to change drastically, or if they're going to utilize a AR-15 style of fire control group. But getting back to Velocity Arms, they're going to have something that's more akin to the classic, the initial series of NPA Defenders or the Cobray M11s. They're going to have the steel frame. They're going to have the 3.25 by 10 TPI threaded barrel, that big fat threaded barrel. Most of them are going to have the top charging uppers. However, they do make side charging uppers. They make extended barrel length uppers. But anyway, if you're after that classic kind of look, they're one of the few that are still providing parts kits, 80% receivers, uppers, a whole host of things with that classic steel framed look, with all the same attachment points for brace or stock adapters. So with those examples out of the way, I want to address what accessories I've kind of upgraded this pistol with. First, you'll notice this kind of different portion here. This is just a grip sleeve, so I'll insert a picture up there. Basically, this just slips on over the top of it. As much as I really do like this product, I personally feel like it's a little overpriced, but it was one of the things that I felt would give this a little bit better traction on the sides. This little ridge down here provides for like a shelf for the pinky. You're still gonna kind of beat up your middle finger when pressed up against this metal trigger guard, but overall this does kind of give it a different feel and makes it feel a little bit more user-friendly rather than grabbing that steel 2x4. And then on this backside, I initially had the ball and detent style of magazine release. So basically the way this would work is this just sandwiches in here, and when the magazine is inserted in, this just uses a spring pressure ball bearing inside, which smashes up against the magazine and catches it in. One of the rumors online about this particular magazine release was that supposedly this was the workaround post 1994 assault weapons ban, that theoretically what the people online were claiming is that this did not have enough tension to keep a fully loaded magazine in the mag well, and that under the vibration of fire it would come undone. Personally, I transitioned away from this because a lot of this is tension dependent, so it has to be perfectly screwed in at a certain depth, but also with that extra tension to really kind of lock it in there. What you're doing on a lot of the polymer mags, although this isn't a good example, let's go with a Cobray magazine. What you're doing is you're marring the catch ledges here, and there's not a lot of meat there. So given enough time, basically because you're inserting it and you're gripping it out, over time it can wear a track through there, and this is a fixed position. So as this eventually does wear in, well, now this could potentially wear enough of this to where it's not going to seat that ball bearing, and it very well may come undone. That being said, these magazines, the old classic Cobray magazines, can have feed lip issues over time. I mean, it's just old, Zytel polymer. But anyhow, I transitioned over into the US Machine Gun Easy magazine release. And what this does is, again, I'll insert a picture to show the difference. The rear of the grip well has a circular hole cut out here for this to fit in. That is slightly different from the standard version, which has basically two kind of running struts up here that the normal lever release will toggle in between, and the ruts are much longer. So those little stripes of metal in there are much longer, and it kind of keeps it all in place. But with the circular one, you just have two little tabs. Again, I'll insert a picture, two little tabs at the bottom to be able to add the cross pin for a magazine release. So on US Machine Gun's website, they basically mentioned that this is a direct replacement for that. And again, I'll provide a picture that shows, or video that shows, how the lever toggles in. Alrighty, so here's where the spring goes. That's that guy, and that presses in against the grip in that little section right there, and the pin, the silver pin right there, is what's going to go through here, and this is going to basically just sit just like that, so it gives us enough space. And it is measured perfectly. Once I installed this, nothing here was of an issue. The measurements that he has that is designed to pair with that particular type of magwell magazine release works beautifully. So this is a fantastic upgrade. While this is a little bit pricier, this is definitely something that I would suggest any owner of a Cobray M11 with this particular type of magazine release shifts over to. I didn't take the risk on buying some of the classic lever release grip kits that they have out there, as I wasn't sure how well they'll play with that circular cutout on the magwell here. So I forewent that because it's about $60, 60 chicken nuggets to be able to buy a kit, only to find out it's incompatible. So instead I went with something that was directly listed in the description as being a replacement for this. So going back to the grip sleeve, it comes with this type of back rear grip panel, and this is much thinner than the factory ones. So the polymer used with the factory ones is a big chunk of plastic. This is very, very thin. Well, I initially wanted to use this because this has little tiny cutouts that basically sandwich up against the grip sleeve and kind of keep it locked in place. My magazine release spring that came with the Easy Mag release did not fit over the top of this and envelop this peg. It actually sat on top, and when this was sandwiched down, it would end up coming undone, and or there was too much tension because it wasn't going down and seating. So I could reduce the overall circumference there in order to get the spring to seat over the top of it. But what I ended up opting to do is I test fit the other rear grip panel, and this is a Cobray grip panel that US Machine Gun includes in the Easy magazine release kit. The bummer about this is where this ball and detent is, there's this little cutout, but again, the spring can't sit perfectly flush. When you finally anchor this down, the spring has a tendency to want to push up and off or down or sideways. So what I had to do, and again I'm using this just as a visual, is I had to drill the hole. I basically took this and I took this, I measured where they kind of went against, and even though this is the magazine release, there's a little bit more material on this one, and I just basically drilled a little divot for that spring to fit into so it can't shift out of position, and that seemed to do the trick. So now it's perfectly in position right inside of there. So basically where that spring is right there, I just drilled a tiny hole on the inside that was the circumference of the spring, and now it seats and it can't go anywhere. So that seemed to be the solution. I wish that US Machine Gun would do that, but I understand he makes a lot of products and perhaps it's not something he's looking at, or maybe as I install this kit was designed to be used with this guy and he wants you to put the spring over the top of that. However, the thickness of this was off because the spring isn't seating, it would sit on the top and not envelop it. So I just used what I had. Plus I like the thicker plastic a little bit more because it houses those smaller tabs a lot better. So rolling on from the grip section and magazine release, we'll go over to this rearward section, and you will see this little shimmed sliver. We'll get to that in a second. This is a Stormworks stock or brace adapter. I'm going to go ahead and refer to this as a brace adapter. Obviously this is a brace. It's not, I mean, you could use it for stocks, but all NFA laws apply, yada yada yada, all that bullshit. Basically This utilizes the ACE interface with 6 little holes. This allows you to mount pick rails and other things that utilize the ACE mounting surface. However, when I initially picked this up, I also noticed that Stormworks sells this shimmed little angled wedge, and so what this does is this kind of just cants the entire thing down a little bit. The bolts still bolt straight through, but now the surface area of the brace housing and adapter kind of are at an angle because of that shim, but everything inside is still in line. The reason why I did that is, well, one, I was already ordering the adapter, and I originally got the adapter because I could have sworn I owned the optics mount that Stormworks also manufactures, and they kind of match. But somewhere down the road, I must have sold that because I can't find it fucking anywhere. So anyway, that's, fuck me. But anyhow, so I was ordering through him, and since I was already getting this to match that, I noticed that they had the shim on there, and I was like, yeah, it'd be kind of cool. And the main logic behind this was to get the brace to dip down to potentially put my line of sight in line with the irons, but this actually needs a more exaggerated angle to be able to pick that up. And unfortunately, because you can basically see the top of the front iron, which, looking at that, it's just a little bent steel noodle. That's all that fucker is. There's nothing fancy. But again, it's an older design where these initially being machine guns, it was a bullet hose. It was basically put X amount of rounds downrange very quickly. You're not doing any kind of like target shooting necessarily with those. I would like to say that the upgraded uppers from Velocity Arms, I believe the company is called, Avis or something of that nature, as well as a few others, make kind of like adjustable sights, so much better top sights. But again, this is strictly talking about the Cobray M11, so very old, antiquated design, very simple. I mean, even the rear sight is just a little fucking steel triangle with a hole drilled in it, and then a little top notch right there. So it is very crude. So we'll cover the upper portion in just a second. Lastly, in terms of the brace adapter, what I went ahead and did is KAK Industries sells these kind of like, let's see if we can take this off here. They sell these micro buffers, and what I had failed to do was my research on their 2.0 micro brace. Basically, this is just a standard Shockwave Gen 2 brace that they just cut down. And, I was under the assumption, because looking at the price, these are a little bit more expensive than just the regular ones. Had I zoomed in on the picture and noticed that they fucking cut it right there, and then it comes rough as shit. I mean, this had fucking burrs everywhere, sharp edges, so I had to like score that down and then sand it. Also, the little lock lever here was rusted as shit, so they just cut this and then threw it in a bin in some dingy, dank fucking warehouse. But come to find out, they do have a little annotation at the bottom of the ad for this that says, hey, this is a cut down version, and the price reflects that. Well, the price doesn't reflect that. The price of these is slightly more expensive than just a standard model. So I should have just saved a couple of bucks, bought this, cut it down myself, and had that. But I initially, when I saw it, I assumed that the blade size was smaller and that this was just an overall more compact version of the Shockwave blade. And kind of a huge bummer. I really wanted something that was a little bit more sleek, and then come to find out it's just a cut version is kind of bullshit. But what they do make that is pretty fucking tight is this little micro buffer tube. This actually keeps things much more compact, and this was worth it. This was way overpriced for what it is, but lesson learned. So anybody going out there, just know it's just a cut down version. You might as well just save, it's like $3 or $4. You might as well buy the full size, cut it yourself. Next up, I want to give a huge shout out to FTF Industries. So initially I wanted a thread protector. I just don't like the idea of exposed thread. So I just bought a little 14 chicken nugget, thread protector there, nothing special. But I was mainly after a new buffer, primarily because this was an original factory buffer from 1994, and just over time, between solvents and time, it turned to like dust. So with that said, I ordered from them, and basically I got this, like a couple days later, I got like a refund notice, and I was like, oh fuck, and it's like out of stock. So I call them up, because every now and then if you call a factory, sometimes it'll be like a single cell unit, right? And so I call him, I was like, hey man, do you have anything in stock? I will fucking take it, I don't give a shit. And he's like, oh yeah brother, we refunded you primarily because you bought the easy cut style of buffers, and we had none of those in stock, so I threw 2 of these in there for you for free, but you're still going to get a refund. So massive shout out. Also the dude I talked to, I didn't catch his name, but the dude I talked to on the phone was fucking really helpful, and the fact that they went and provided 2 of those and refunded me, I thought was really fucking cool. So mad respect to them. That was awesome customer service. They sell, they're one of the vendors online or distributors or manufacturers that sell a bunch of the Cobray M11 style of parts and things like that. So there's a whole host of spare parts that they have. Masterpiece Arms also sells them. U.S. Machine Gun, I think it's like precision shooters or something like that. And then fucking what's that company called? Aves or something like that. They're also a seller of those parts. I want to say there's 1 or 2 that I'm spacing because I'm doing this off the top of my head, but there's a couple that are out there. And the cool thing is that the transferable machine gun market shares a lot of common parts, not everything, but a lot of common parts that can be used inside of these. So very simple parts and things like that. Obviously there's upgraded versions. Obviously there's certain components that won't directly work, but because of that, there are a ton of spare parts out there to get these up and running. And FTS Industries, Jesus fucking Christ, is one of those companies, and they actually hit a home run. I've ordered from them about 2 or 3 other times, but years ago. So it was nice to have them kind of have that kind of customer service recently. So that was pretty fucking dope. So props to them. I want to say thank you for that. So that was pretty cool. Next, I want to address the magazines. So again, talking about these as your kind of like favored PCC, again, touching on the uppers here in a second, and the limitations that are with, the shorter ones. The next limitation would be magazines. So, currently what you can find on the actual market, not like a pawn shop score, not like, I know a guy who knows a guy who had a couple of these, and he sold them to me. I'm talking about what you can go online and buy right now. You can, because they made like tens of thousands of the Cobray Zytel polymer magazines. You can find these, but it seems like they're raising in price. I don't know if some manufacturer bought the molds and they're making these as well, because you would think that these would have been depleted out by now. But these can be found anywhere on the low side of 20 chicken nuggets upwards of 50 chicken nuggets. So it really depends on who you get them from. However, because they are from the days of old, unless somebody's currently manufacturing them, I don't know, if it's never been loaded or anything. Sure, you're good to go, because there's some new old stock that's out there. But at the same time, if they have been heavily used, you have to definitely, if you read any of the forum stuff, the feed lips can definitely start cracking or wearing out and things like that. Again, it's from the 80s and 90s, so very, very old. I'd say the modern polymer magazine offering that is readily available would be manufactured by ProMag. And I'm no promosexual, but sometimes they do have products that do work. Not everything. I'd say about a 90% chance it's not going to work, but at least they're innovative and they're coming out with a variety of magazines for things. Sometimes they're not aesthetically pleasing. Sometimes the spring tension inside is very weak. Sometimes the fitment isn't at all correct. I've gone through all of those, but every now and then they hit it out of the park. A Saiga 308 magazine, a Mini 14 magazine, and hopefully this. I haven't shot with this yet, but one of the main complaints online with the ProMag Cobray M11 magazines was that the body is a little bit too thick, so people were having to sand down the body to be able to get this to fit in the mag well. Outside of that, I had held my breath. I ordered about 4 or 5 of them, and lo and behold, it fits my mag well perfectly. So we'll just pop that bitch around. So mine fits absolutely beautifully. The other thing I tested for is I took the upper receiver off, inserted this, and it seats perfectly. As you go ahead and, rack the bolt back, you get nothing that hangs up on the feed lips, and that's exactly what you're after. So basically that is that is a good sign. Secondly, the other thing that I did is I hand stripped the round, so I fully loaded it, felt like there was good spring tension, and hand ejected each round, and I was getting good feeding, no hangups or anything like that inside. Some people have complained that perhaps the follower can kind of get hung up inside, as well as on the Z-mag that's over here, but I had no problems there because the dimensions are very, very similar to these. You can buy replacement spring kits that were for the old Cobray mags and utilize those springs inside of here if there isn't enough spring tension. So until they take this out to the range, I'm unsure of if this is going to be a reliable magazine, but if it is, that'll be pretty fucking sick. Secondly, a cool feature like on the Cobray magazines is you have your over travel stop tab here, but then you have this seated area here, and these come down and out of the magwell just below the actual lip of the magwell. And what you can do is you can, if you wanted more of a flush fit magazine, is you can cut this and now have something that fits in the body of the magwell and just have it slightly protruding, and now you have either a 10 or 15 round magazine. Until I cut it, I'm not sure quite what it'll fit, but I'd say estimation between 10 and 15 rounds, since it's about halfway. And then of course, you know, clipping the spring is its own thing, but the width here is the same down here. So this just would pop on there once I cut it down, and it should be good to go. So I'm probably going to order about 5 more if these do run, and, you know, just hack them down and then have, you know, a couple of smaller flush fit mags, because it's just a different feel. But anyway, that covers the readily available polymer mags on the market. What you may find every now and then is a RPB style of mag, and these are, you know, have been coated in some epoxy paint of some kind, but I had a fuck of a time trying to find information on these. And these are designed to be used with the Cobray because they have over travel stop here, and their cutout is the exact proportions to the magazine release, both the little ball and detent as well as the Easy Mag. So I mean, this is intended to be used with a Cobray, but I couldn't find a tremendous amount of history or information on RPB. I don't know if they're affiliated with the Mac 11s, Mac 10s, things like that. I saw a couple of forum posts, but there wasn't anything that was clear and definite that talked about who they were. So RPB Industries, I'm unsure, but these are like, I believe 20 or 25 round magazines, and they're all steel, and these were out before the Z-Mag that is seen on the end over there. So I thought it was pretty cool when this was included in my purchase of this pistol. I was like, oh fuck, cool. All right, you know, we'll take that. That'll buy me some time for right now. But same kind of thing. These have a little bit less of a pronounced profile in comparison to something, you know, like that, just ever so slightly. But anyway, yeah, so I thought that was pretty cool. However, these are not readily available online. FTF Industries had them for a stint, but they commanded a pretty high price. I'd say probably between 50 and 70 chicken nuggets. And at that point, you might as well roll on to something like this. And this is the Shockwave Technologies Z-Mag. And so this is an all-steel modern magazine. You have your round count witness holes here. This is a 50 rounder. There's that Easy Mag. Check that out. Look at that fucking ghetto blaster. Now with all the homies, I might have to be, I don't know if this will fit out the window, you know, with how long that is, but break yourself, fool. It's so fucking retarded. One of the things I ran into, I'll insert the little video here. What I ran into is the trigger bar is bent in. So this, I believe, is a cast part. So I don't know if I want to bend it. I could order a new one of these, but what I ran into, because it's not very noticeable with the polymer ones. See, the polymer ones tend to slip right past. See, their geometry is a little bit different in here. Kind of a little bit of a rounded edge, so it slips past that. But what I ran into with the Z-Mags is there's a hard ledge, right? So what I ended up doing is I chamfered the edge here, if you guys can see that, so that it's not a hard edge, but now a slightly rounded one. It's oiled up. But this So there we go. Okay, so it now just misses the edge, but it now slides in just fine. And so that's my current solution, is I only took off a teeny bit of material utilizing a simple grinding wheel. And it's bypassing this bent portion. The solution would probably be to replace this, as I don't know if I could get away with just bending this bar. So far, it feels like this is going to work pretty okay. And forgive me, the insertion is all fucked up because of the tension I'm using for this bearing. So this actually needs to come out one or two more notches, but you can tell it's just a little bit too far out. But it's initially installed in order to be able to use something with this like this with full capacity at full weight, because otherwise it would just drop out. And that was one of the common complaints when it came to fully loaded 30 rounders inside of here utilizing this magazine release. So with that said, yeah, I just beveled the edge over here because of the trigger bar that was inside of there and got it to work. One of the complaints online is some people were mentioning that when these first came out, the followers were a little bit too large and we'd get some sticking inside of the mag body. So that could very well be the case. I have not ran this yet. I'm just doing all just hand fitting and hand testing right now, but unloaded this by hand and seemed to work just fine. I'll say with the over-tensioning of this particular magazine release type were an absolute bitch, because it would get caught in there and I had to back it out ever so slightly because I was getting extreme tension for this. But with this guy, it was kind of catching before it actually got into the little magazine locking portion here. So all of these rivet divots down in here was definitely causing some issues. So that was kind of a little bit of a pain in the ass. But overall, very well made mags. The 50 rounder, I think, is like 60 chicken nuggets. And then the 30 or 32 rounders are about 48 chicken nuggets. So a little bit pricey, but these are things that you can buy and have fucking forever. So if you were to have a Cobray M11, I highly suggest these. These are exquisite. These are probably the best modern magazines for this particular firearm. So, well, you can still find these steel Cobray magazine loaders. What I found to actually work pretty well with these, because the mag bodies are fairly wide, is I took a G20 style of Glock mag loader, and it works really well for what it is. This envelops all of these magazines. Same thing here. And basically it works. I did the entire loading of the 50 rounder utilizing this, and it was a good cheap fix. A lot of times these are in like just trash bags, you know, pawn shops and things like that. They're dirt fucking cheap, and they work. You can buy more expensive models, but for right now, that's my solution for easy loading of a magazine. So lastly, I want to cover the primary upgrade for this to bring it into more of the modern PCC option. So if you've addressed all the accessories, you've addressed the parts, the magazines and things like that, next would be the uppers. And I really wish that Masterpiece Arms would get into 8 or 12 inch or 11 inch barrel length uppers, because I find that if you added a brace, you kind of bring it into more of a modern era of a PCC and make it a lot more usable, because now you'll have this top rail. It's going to be side charging. You can add iron sights, but you can add a magnified optic or a red dot or something of that nature, and really kind of make it a lot more useful despite its limitations, you know, design-wise with everything else. That being said, that's my intent here. So because everything is removable and there's no permanent modifications that have occurred, I could take all of this stuff off and replace it all back to factory. So I could still have that as a gangster gun. What I want to go ahead and do is replace the upper. So I'm still going to retain the upper so that I could swap back and forth and, you know, still have some fun and fuck around. But what I want to try and shoot for is, at this point in time, it's a toss-up between Liege, which is a little bit more expensive. They also run out of stock. They're like the top shelf aftermarket upper supplier, because they have a very cool design. They actually built their history in upper adapters for the transferable machine guns, where they have the magwell out front here and no longer utilizes the grip magwell and actually runs it straight from the upper. So very innovative. They have like Glock stuff. They have a 5.56 conversion, things like that. Very cool, but they do have semi-auto versions, and those I believe believe are hovering at about 8 inches or so, but it gives you somewhere to place your support hound out front versus this tiny, little nub of a barrel where you kind of have to hold your hand in. So that's pretty cool, but every now and then they go out of stock and it takes a while, or if you buy it on back order, it could take, anywhere from 6 weeks to, I've heard, 6 or 8 months. And also with that said, they command a higher price, but it doesn't come with a bolt assembly, so it'll utilize the current one that you have, which isn't the end of the world. But if you want to readily swap back and forth and not, be fucking with your bolt carrier group and stuff like that, or your bolt rather, force of habit bolt, then you could maybe shift over to these other two possibilities. So there's going to be Velocity Arms and AVES, I think, so, or AVES. I don't know how it's fucking pronounced. I don't give a shit. But anyway, it's pretty easy to remember, AVES. I don't know if the AVES distributor or vendor or whatever, I don't know if they manufacture things or if they just sell other people's components. So I didn't look heavily into their company. However, Velocity Firearms currently manufactures all those fucking spare parts and uppers and things like that. The only downside is while everything looks aesthetically similar, admittedly, Velocity Firearms, upon one of my email requests, I was asking what the dimensional differences are, and they are saying that their uppers are a little bit thicker than the Cobray uppers. So if you are to get it, you're going to have to do a little bit of sanding, possibly on this bottom section and on the rear section that fits in, but how much, I don't know. So it's a little risky, but with their elongated uppers, the 8 and 11, they come with complete bolts. So, you get the whole package. And so it would just go down to how much material I actually need to take off. But they're about $200 chicken nuggets cheaper than Liege is, but at the same time I get a couple of extras, and so it would just depend on how much modification is necessary to get it to fit. Dimensionally, I believe once it's actually seated, everything should play well together, because a lot of the core components inside, the operating components, are basically the same. So I believe that the fitment should be fine. It would just be, or not the fitment, but the operation should be fine. It would just be the fitment that's an issue. So I'm probably going to entertain that, because they have an upper that I do like. Basically, it's just a standard kind of top rail side charging upper with this elongated barrel that has a little barrel ring on it, similar I believe to an AR, and so you can use any free floating rail to go out front. So they have a couple that are in stock that actually look pretty slick, and so I'm heavily considering buying that. But with Liege, despite it being a higher price point, it is pretty fucking sexy. So I'm unsure of which way to go currently, but I'm leaning towards Velocity and modifying it because I think it would be an entertaining project, and it's a little bit cheaper. And if I fuck up too much, well, then I suppose I could just buy an 80% receiver and then just work on that, and then make that like my cobbled together gun, and just keep the Cobray as is, and then eventually get a Liege for the Cobray. So the other question is asked online a lot is, like, do Masterpiece Arms uppers fit the M11s? And they do. According to Masterpiece Arms information, their uppers are directly seatable on the Cobray receiver, so there's nothing you have to worry about. Apparently they play very well together. But Masterpiece Arms has kind of shifted away from the 16-inch barrels. I don't believe they've made an 11-inch barrel. So basically what they offer is this same profile, but with a rail on top and a side charger. And I'm trying to get away from this particular length of barrel and upper receiver. So the receivers will still be the same, but the barrel length is what I'm looking to change, so that I can have a rail out here for my support hand. And I feel like that would be a better solution to kind of making this more of a updated PCC kind of range toy than anything else. So while I have this disassembled, there are a couple of different front takedown pins. This is the kind of older, thicker, just single takedown pin. There's others that are a male-female connective takedown pin, and then I've seen some that are pins that you have to take a little Allen wrench and lock down. So this kind of works for what it is. I do assume when this was installed, they kind of egged it out a teeny bit. You can tell it's not a perfect circle, but it works for what it is. The other side looks just fine, but that's definitely a thing there. And also, while I have this disassembled so YouTube knows it's safe, one of the weird things when you first get one of these is the safety spins. So don't be alarmed. Basically, the spring right in here keeps this from dipping down under fire. It'll basically stay here because there's this little flat piece that rides underneath the wire here that's kind of anchored by the trigger pin that's there. And so you can spin it any which way, but it's one of the things that you don't really see on a lot of videos is when you go to buy one of these, you're like, oh shit, is something broken? Because I can just spin this 360. And no, it's part of the design. There's really no upgrade in here because all you're dealing with is just this fucking little spring there, this little wire piece. It's just this kind of bent little wire, and that's it. So anyway, not to be alarmed. So if you see that, that's perfectly normal. As long as the tension is good forward and backward, and it's not rocking itself loose, then you're good to go. The mounting, basically you have to take the internal components out. It's much easier to do that. It's very difficult to get in there and try to lock the little fastener down for the brace adapter here. It's just easier to take this all apart, but it is very, very easy. I can't do it online because I don't know YouTube's restrictions, but it's super fucking simple. Anybody can do it. If I can do it, you can definitely do it, but it's much easier to get this trigger bar out of the way and then go ahead and mount it that way. I'm unsure if Stormworks has a design for like a sling swivel or something, or if perhaps this secondary hole is for a difference of measurement for other receivers. But anyway, that'd be kind of cool to mount up a little sling stud there because it wouldn't interfere with the grip since it sits so far back. So that'd be kind of dope. And then I could go ahead and take this little, QD cup end plate off. But anyhow, yeah, so those are a couple of details there. So this is the buffer that I was talking about, and basically the easy buffer just has a cutout for the return spring. And what I did is I just took an X-Acto knife and I just cut a little square shape out of it. And then what's holding this in place is the ejector rod that goes through here. So this thing just can come in and out. This just comes in and out. But to take this guy off the return spring, you're going to have to punch out a roll pin. And I didn't want to do that, so I opted to go with just the easy style, and I did that myself. And so you're not out of the woods. You don't have to take this whole thing apart. If you just want to replicate that by cutting this notch out, just go ahead and measurement. Make sure that you don't take off too much. And in fact, if you take off just enough to kind of kiss the return spring a little bit, it'll kind of keep it in there nice and square. And then when this fits in the receiver, this is kind of locked in place and it can't really go anywhere or shift or anything like that. So it's actually a pretty cool solution. And if all you could find access to was the original ones, well, then you're not out of the woods. You can, or not, you're not. Fuck, I'm getting tongue-tied here. Anyway, you're not out of luck. You can go ahead and just cut that off and have a perfect solution. So there you have it, folks. Kind of scatterbrained, just topical view discussion of the Cobray PM11-9. Yeah, it's a fun little springtime project before I roll on to a couple of the others that I want to get done this summer. There's much better options out there. This kind of has more of a personal nostalgia. I actually deeply regretted selling off my Masterpiece Arms MPA 30 steel framed model because it ran beautifully and I had it basically fully accessorized, and I had a really good time with it. But I convinced myself that, I'm just gonna go get something else. I got an AR9 now. I don't need it. But I missed it. It's a lot of fun. It's one of those ones that you can take to the range, and people will see something like this in a classic movie and be like, oh, or they'll see a video game and they'll be like, oh, you have an M11? And it's like, well, yes and no. I have a civilian version of it, and then they can kind of see for themselves, and it's just a fun plinking toy. But again, primarily purchase this because it's just something that I was like, fuck, if I do have an impending magazine and gun ban in my state, I might as well have something kind of unique and fun, and it helps change up the flavors at the range where I can go ahead and dabble with that, since I don't take this shit too seriously. I just like having fun. At the end of the day, that's what I'm after. But looking at this on paper, this is definitely an unwise investment of time and money, because the amount of stuff you're gonna have to throw at this to get this competitive with the modern PCC offerings, I can't at all suggest it. But it's beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and if you have enough money to fuck around with, or if you're a deal hunter like myself, if you got time and some money, you can definitely kind of force fuck this into something a little bit different. Other than that, thank you guys for watching. I don't check my channel very often, but when I do, I try to get to absolutely everybody. Other than that, thank you guys very much for watching, and take care.